Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Developing a Proper Worldview. This is episode number 76. We're currently at the beginning of part 5 of our series. So if you happen to be catching this randomly or you're new to the channel, these are done in a set purposeful order. So please make sure you go back and watch them in that order. It's vitally important. Hence the title of the series, Developing. You don't want to skip a process of the development. We're building layer upon layer, so it's important that you get that foundation right. Otherwise, if the foundation's wrong, everything else is going to fall apart. And that foundation is part 1 of our series, and that's Jesus Christ. I've often thought to myself, this is the most satisfying, important ministry that I do. I've got several others. I do a podcast. I just recently started doing 60-second TikTok videos. The mindset there was, I think a lot of, because I'm a big user of Facebook and YouTube, but I think a lot of the youth of today don't use those systems. They use others. They use Snapchat or TikTok or whatever else is out there. And I thought about Paul saying, become all things, in order to reach all people. And if we want to reach the youth, we have to go where the youth are. And their public square are those other platforms. And I thought, the other thing I thought is the attention span of people is very, very limited. When you're scrolling and you're reading a post or you're watching a video, if there's not something to hook them immediately, you just got a few seconds, and then they're scrolling on. And so I thought, 60 seconds is still asking a lot of today's generation, unfortunately, but it's not so lengthy that a person wouldn't watch it. So I started trying to figure out a way to do 60-second like soundbite ministry pieces, and just been trying to put those out on TikTok, and that's been going well. I also do Facebook Live series through the Word. I mentioned the podcast, and then I have a series of teaching videos that I finished up here recently. Those are available on my YouTube. And then I started a new one called Milking the Word, where we're trying to draw the milk out of each individual verse. Trying to draw the nutrients out of it, absorb as much as possible out of one verse. So it's kind of a focused in 20-minute session on one verse. And that's called Milking the Word. So I got all those, but I thought, this is probably the most important one that I do. As far as like this is where I've spent the majority of my life. I feel like this is where the Lord led me into this particular field, so to speak. These governmental conspiracy type things, New World Order type things. Since I've been saved, that's really been on my heart. It's been where I've been focused. And in the 20 plus years of my salvation, I've come across a ton of information. Some nonsensical, and you just throw that out, and then a lot of good stuff, and so that's what we're doing with these videos, is I'm sharing the good with you, and sharing, one thing I thought that was always lacking was if you just stumble across New World Order type stuff, the amount of information, the amount of data is very overwhelming. And I've always wanted something done succinctly, something done linear. Like, here's your starting point, and here's how to take in all this information piece by piece, rather than it coming upon you like a hurricane, which, if you turn into like InfoWars or something along those lines, David Knight or anything like that, if you try to get the information, they're just going to be dropping bombs on you of like collegiate level stuff, so to speak, when we're in kindergarten. And it's just going to go over your head, and it's going to sound insane, and it's overwhelming. And so I always thought, man, it would be really nice just to have a starting point. Here's where you start your research, and here's how you build upon that research. And providentially, the Lord had allowed me to gather up over 200 documentaries, and I started thinking about how should a person watch these, and what order, and because that's the way I like to learn. And then you can supplement that learning as we go. Like part one, we learned about the gospel, and we looked at several Way of the Master documentaries, and or it used to be a TV show, so it's little 30-minute TV shows. There's several seasons of that. We only went through a few, so go back and watch all of those. And then also Ray Comfort has a lot of like 30, 45-minute documentaries, like 180, where he shows people being persuaded quickly to change their mind on the topic of abortion, or Genius, where he talks about, what the heck was that one about? It's I can picture it in my head. It's got John Lennon on the cover. It's something to do with genius level people, I think. I don't remember. But then he's got evolution, atheist versus, or atheist something, and I forget the names of these. You can go and look them up. He's got one on Noah's flood and all sorts of stuff that you can research. And then you can go to Answers in Genesis, and they have a ton of specified information on creation versus evolution, which was part 2 of our series, the creationism thing. And so Answers in Genesis, which we didn't look at. We looked at the Kent Hovind seminar and several other documentaries, but AIG has a lot of short documentaries that'll focus in on like radiocarbon dating, radioactive carbon dating, or starlight, or human population growth, or diseases, or something like that. So you can do additional research there. You can also research Creation Research Institution, Dr. Dino, Kent Hovind. We watched the 7-part creation seminar series, but then you can go and look at, he's got college courses, free to watch on YouTube. What the heck are they called? Creationism 101 or something like that. If you just type in, Dr. Kent Hovind, Creationism 101, I'm sure you'll get it. And then he's got classes 101 through 140 or something like that. And then he's got classes 201 through whatever. Just countless hours, not countless, but dozens and dozens of hours of stuff you can learn. There's books out there that you can read. There's websites you can visit. So much information to take in on the subject. And then part 3 of our series, we were looking at the American Empire, and we watched the Chris Pinto Megiddo series. You can go to their website, cuttingedge.org, and there's, again, just countless. There's so many. You can go to their DVD section and find all sorts of videos on all sorts of topics. Or if you're a book reader, you can find books. They've got articles. They got a weekly newsletter. I disagree with their eschatology. I think they're pre-trib rapture type people, dispensationalists. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've looked into that, but regardless of that, they still do a great job of doing research. The internet's getting harder to find good stuff. There used to be a website, I don't know if it's still out there, Illuminati News, netcenter.net, netstr.net, I think is what it was. Tons and tons and tons of information on there. Trying to think here, what else? I mean, those are you wouldn't ever be able to come to an end of the information with just that. So those are good places to go. And then part 4, we looked at the 9/11 conspiracies, and again, there's so much information out there. We watched several of the best documentaries, I feel, but there's probably 1,000 other documentaries on that subject you could watch. And now we're in the martial law section, looking at how powerful and how overwhelming this authoritarian system will be, this New World Order system, how they have the technology, they have the power. They are training soldiers and police to enforce their authoritarian system. And we're gonna watch, I think, 4 documentaries. We're still watching the first one, but beyond those, you can look into like Officer Jack McLam. Um, Good luck finding some of this stuff. There's stuff from inside the Pentagon that I found a long time ago. There's both civilian and military workers in the Pentagon, and this guy who had the highest rank on the civilian side released some information about the red and green lists. So do some research on that. Officer Jack McLam has incredible insight and information. He's passed away, but Dr. Stan Monteith, I believe he's passed away as well. But there used to be a radio station, I think it was called GCW, with several of these people on there, including old AJ. But you can get that. Dr. Kathy Albrecht had amazing information on the Mark of the Beast system, the implantable RFID microchips. Let's see, Dave Hunt, who I don't agree again with his end time stuff, but he's got a lot of good information on this particular field. Mark Dice, you can go to his website. He's still on YouTube, so you can still get him on YouTube. He does quick little videos, but he's got a lot of books, a lot of good insight. I mentioned David Knight, The David Knight Show, one of my favorites. I think he's a pretty solid brother. He's very intellectual, so sometimes a lot of his stuff can be hard to follow, or at least hard to keep your attention, but he is well worth listening to. So yeah, those are some, and then as we go along, I'll also give additional resources. But the point is there's so much out there. Like I'm saying, it can be overwhelming. So I wanted to put together something that you can follow along point by point, and have a proper understanding of what is going on in the world, the times we live in, and understand it from the truth, from the biblical perspective. To understand that this is God's plan. This is God's doing. This is how the return of Jesus Christ is coming about. There will be a new world order system. There will be an anti-Christ, anti-Christian, authoritarian dictatorship that enforces tyranny, enforces persecution over the saints. And so we're told over and over in the scriptures to be prepared, to have our hearts prepared, to be ready, to be alert, to be on guard, to watch. And so that's what we're doing here. We're trying to see, okay, who is this enemy? What do they have planned? Just so we can know ahead of time, and so we can be detached from this materialistic world, and that we can have our hearts set on things above, have our hearts set on the kingdom, and be kingdom minded, and try to preach the gospel while we still have time, and try to make people aware of the futility of this life, and the preciousness of time, how their time is running out, and they must repent and turn to Jesus Christ before it's too late. And watching the authoritarian system set itself up here with this Part 5 martial law section, I think that's really helping us. But yeah, so we're watching Police State 4 right now. There's 3 previous ones that you can go back and watch. And we might be able to finish here tonight. I don't know. It's getting kind of late. It's 8:18. I still got to edit this and everything. I want to kind of be done by 8:30. So by 9:30, I'm sorry. Without further introduction, then let's just jump into it and get going. Let's go.
Okay, I would appreciate we have units coming up through the park. Pushing towards the park. This is how we're going to push them. After we get the encirclement, we're going to push them down forward back towards Shenley Drive Extension. The Shenley Drive Extension open.
Look, bottom line, as a Christian, if you find yourself in a situation like that where the riot team, the police, are starting to gather up, what are you doing sticking around? There's no point in staying around. Get out of there. Go. But before it even happens, when you start to sense, when you start, because like they're talking about kettling. I think that's where they get you, the protesters boxed in. Like, don't allow yourself to get in that position. As soon as you see a massive protest starting to break in, which is a constitutional right, so I'm not saying that they don't have that right, but a Christian, that's not our purpose. Get out of there. It's time to go. Don't have no part in that. That's not for us.
Continue to push, and we'll establish a skirmish line along 37 ground extension. Task 42, there was a little miscommunication on my order, but now we're attempting a encirclement in the park. And
the police began to charge following the initiation of a tactic they called kettling. So called as to reflect the purpose of a kettle, to hold in water and heat it until it attempts to boil over.
They're closing in. Get out of there. They're going to arrest everybody. And the police, he said, at the last thing, were coming from 3 ways, blocking them in. That's what they do. They corner you and then attack.
Stand by for gas deployment. We're setting that up along Melville. Any units should use. We have 5th Avenue covered. Unit 30, I'd like to express.
So I just want to point out real quick, like, the weapons of our warfare as Christians are not flesh and blood. We don't fight this way. We don't fight the empire with the Constitution. We fight the empire with the gospel. Like, our mission is to proclaim the gospel to every soul so that they'll be awakened, that they'll be translated into the kingdom of light. And we expose the darkness to make them aware, but that's all done through communication. We don't resist with anarchy. We don't resist with protests. We don't resist with arms. That's in Revelation it says those who live by the sword will die by the sword, and those who take prisoner will be taken prisoner. That's not the way we fight. Our fight is the gospel. We proclaim the gospel. And so you need to be wise, be aware of your surroundings, be aware, you're probably, if you're researching the New World Order, you're watching these videos, the chances are we're probably on a list somewhere. Like, I personally think that's why they allow organizations like this one to operate, because then they can just follow IP addresses of everybody who goes to the website, everybody who watches the videos, and they can go, oh, okay, these are all the awake people. These are the ones where if we roll out martial law, we roll out some sort of lockdown, these are the ones we need to be concerned about. And then if you're a registered gun owner, it's doubly so. They go, okay, that's a real one we really need to be concerned about. Or if you're talking about militias and patriot movements, like, I don't even like using those words, because I want to be an agent of peace. I want to live peaceably as much as possible. We resist the devil, not the systems he uses. We resist him by exposing him, by showing his works, by saying, look how evil this is, look how wicked this is. Separate from that, come out from amongst that, join the kingdom of light, through the proclamation of the gospel. So just be wise. If you're a prepper or whatever, just be aware that, the government's probably aware of you. They have the technology, they have the resources. They're probably aware of us. I would think that they wouldn't consider us as just informational junkies. They wouldn't consider us much of a threat. But you want to just be aware, maintain a low profile, live at peace as much as possible, expose the unfruitful works of darkness with your words, with information, and preach the gospel. We want to see people saved. Don't go protesting or rioting or picketing or storing up arms and getting ready for Armageddon. That's not the fight we're called to. That's not what we're appointed to, so just be aware of that.
Everyone can get an excellent job done.
Just remember that's a young girl right there.
All the operations G20.
Now, let's go ahead and go over these articles. Brigade Homeland Tour starts October 1st. 3rd Infantry's 1st BCT trains for new dwell time mission. Helping people at home may become a permanent part of active Army. And then you read this, the Washington Post reported it, everybody else did. It says, for riot control and civil unrest during a collapse of society. Then the Army War College came out a month later and said, yes, we're preparing to engage the American people. So there's that going on. So they have to have troops to take you to the FEMA camps. Washington Post, 20,000 more U.S. troops to be deployed for domestic security. They then expanded and said it won't be 4,000 troops, it'll be 20,000. Now they're saying, oh, it'll be 40,000 regular Army troops. The very troops that were in Baghdad doing gun confiscation, the very best troops they've got. Here's another one. Marines admit security force to operate inside U.S. This directly from the Marine Corps' own website. And they did it with role players, practicing confiscating people's guns. Here's another one. Unit learns skills to fight different enemy. And this is out of the American Force Press Service. See, this is all part of acclimation. And then in a 4-state area in the Midwest a few months ago, there was a report about the Army suddenly locking down parts of cities and then the disgraced Governor Blagojevich announced about 5 months ago, before he had that big scandal, and we played the newscast here where he said we're going to have the Army go door to door confiscating guns in Illinois. And then we have the first time the Army got called into New Orleans, going to the high and dry areas with the police and FBI. All the weapons will be taken. No one will be allowed to be armed. And then putting people in handcuffs that had guns, taking their guns.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors and people refuse to leave, we need to make a note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn.
It's insane.
And instructions to disarm anyone inside.
Happening in America.
You say guns will be taken. No one will.
You see how they use crisis to overrule Constitution. Like, oh, because this emergency is happening, you don't have rights. And, that's messed up. How you going to tell people they got to leave their homes because a storm's coming? People have the freedom. If they want to risk their lives, that's their prerogative. If they feel more comfortable at home and they think, hey, I'm not afraid of a storm. I'm not afraid of a cough. You know what I'm talking about? A sneeze. I'm not afraid of that. So I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it. What gives the government the right to say, no, you got to leave your home, you got to do X, Y, and Z? That's an authoritarian system. That goes against, that's the very purpose for the Constitution. So you can see how we no longer live in a free society. We live in an authoritarian system hidden behind a veil of freedom. They keep people materialistic and comfortable, and everybody will just ignore all these violations of freedom.
Be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions.
That's what caused
Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. You never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're gonna have to do. Somebody pops around the corner.
Let me shoot in America.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on record. That happened. This is what they're training for. This is what they do the first chance they get. Stop living in denial.
Attention, attention, attention. American forces are here to help. Remain calm. We will not tolerate civil disobedience.
Every time there's a crisis, there will be authoritarian reaction. They'll either create the crisis or wait for one to pop off.
Throw the gun away, Mr. Randall. Go on, throw it.
Don't fix, mister.
This is the poorest county in Montana, and the $27 million prison has turned into a white elephant. Because there are no prisoners, Glenn and Ray Perkins got laid off after moving to Hardin to take guard jobs.
When I went to the door, there were two cops standing with their hands on their guns. I lived in the same town for 26 years.
We got 90 and 94 sitting right over here where they intersect, which is a perfect place for a checkpoint. I noticed that they got these mobile checkpoint stations.
There's a lot of secrecy going on.
I'm concerned about the legitimacy of who they are.
Nothing is square in this whole thing.
I cannot let my grandchild grow up in this kind of thing.
And its main focus is to bring prisoners and jobs to Hardin.
We've got a beautiful, beautiful facility here.
Becky, it's time to get straight with us now. We need to know these things. I think the people of Hardin need to know this.
Becky, for her pay package, I don't know what she made as a reporter for the Gazette, but I know it wasn't much. But here, she's getting paid $60,000 a year, plus a house, plus a Mercedes.
I don't understand who this company is, why they...
Follow the money.
Where were they 2 years ago?
Follow the money.
That's all I have to say. Where were they before the ground broke?
Follow the money.
And its main focus is to bring prisoners and jobs to Hardin.
You think it's mysterious at all?
It probably is to those that don't know what's going on.
Carrie Smith is the wife of Two Rivers Authority Executive Director Greg Smith, who was recently placed on administrative leave.
Well, members of the American Police Force showed up in Hardin yesterday, driving vehicles with Hardin Police written on them. As Color 8's Nick Law reports, it created quite a stir, especially because Hardin doesn't have a city police department.
This was the talk of the town in Hardin on Thursday. Mercedes decked out in the City of Hardin Police Department decals and driven by American Police Force members. Two Rivers Authority officials say having APF patrol the streets was never part of their agenda.
Tell people what's really happening here.
Well, first of all, Alex, around the country, and it's not just in Montana, but specific areas are being identified as staging grounds. And just recently, we had 12 Tajikistan troops on BMWs. These are the same BMWs that you and I talked about meeting.
And by the way, the UN admits their main force is Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Egyptian and Pakistani. That's their main UN force. Well, Steve, we know in Serbia they've had black sites, the secret ghost sites with the kidnap, snatch and grab people.
Absolutely.
We know that they're in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan. We know they're in Egypt. We know they're in Germany. We know they're in Poland. We know they're in the Czech Republic. We also know that they are in other areas. And so this fits the classic MO where they use these private ghost contractors to run this. Oh, I'm having trouble right now even dealing with this and processing it. Man, talk about Spookville, CIAville, black sedans running like roaches. When you flip the light on at 3 a.m. in your apartment, there's like big fat roaches going. And they're like, ah! Now the locals are getting upset by these black Mercedes SUVs that have Hardin, Montana on them and then the double eagle crest, just announcing, we are your police. This is insane. Men with foreign accents stomping around. I mean, this is Red Dawn happening. And the local officials are going, yeah, we've been told they run the camp and that they run the town now. I mean, this is Twilight Zone.
So FEMA's got prison camps all over the place, supposedly. So a lot of my research is probably outdated. I stopped really going heavy on this probably 2015. I started getting into more doctrine and evangelism around then. But prior to that, it was a lot of focus on just end times and conspiracy stuff. So a lot of my information is going to be outdated. There's probably a ton of, as you can see, a lot of my documentaries are old. There's probably good stuff out there now, or I don't know, maybe I just lived in that window of opportunity where information was still readily available. We live in a time of censorship now, but the point is the last number I heard, I think, was like 125 FEMA camps in America. They have America divided into 10 sections, 10 FEMA regions, and then each region probably has a central hub. I think each region has a Federal Reserve Bank, and then there's multiple federal or FEMA camps everywhere. So I haven't seen one personally. I think there's one. The map I saw years ago showed one maybe about an hour from where I'm at. I guess I've never just taken the time to drive over there and look at it, but supposedly they're out there.
We're going to go to phone calls here in just a moment. Let's talk to Diane in Montana. Diane in Montana, where this is going on, but as Steve said, it's happening everywhere. Diane, what's your info?
Okay, September 9th, we had a small incident where there was a bunch of SUVs, black Hummers, you name it. It was all there. They even brought a helicopter in. It was 4 miles from my home. So when we went to check it out, they were all over climbing the mountains in camo, dressed up. They were armed, and they said they were just doing a training exercise. Called the sheriff's office, and we got the same story. It's just FBI training, but it was FEMA, right in Superior. And we're probably about maybe 4,000 population.
What did the locals think, and how many FBI FEMA troops were there?
Okay, there were 6 vehicles when my husband went right by them. He called back and said, lock down. I don't know what's going on, if there's escaped prisoners or what. Same time, helicopter came through, right overhead. Called his secretary who was coming in on I-90, told her to check that area out and look at it, and that's when she saw all the camo guys all over the mountainside just crawling up. Asked around town, people didn't think anything about it.
We now go live to Alex Jones on the ground in Hardin, Montana. Alex?
Okay, we just got a tour from Becky Shea, the former Billings Gazette reporter that's now the PR spokesperson for this facility for American Police Force. She admitted that it'll be a foreign paramilitary mercenary training facility. She admitted that it's going to be a detention facility. The point is this is just off the charts. They're now doing massive damage control. They're about to give us a tour of the outside of the facility. I just got a tour of only one wing of this gigantic $27 million facility. They would not let us into most of the areas. Just while I was in some of the offices, I saw blueprints, I saw documents. I'm just going to leave it at that. But this story is definitely the mother lode. This is definitely a black site / ghost site in the United States. They plan to have this be a ghost site, but locals blew the whistle. They were definitely going to try to become the police through the Two Rivers Authority, basically taking over the town of Hardin. This individual is tied in with high-powered Serb operatives. His dad is some type of high-ranking Serb, Chatar, but he won't give anybody else his name. Then you have this Hilton character. Again, that's a fake name. He's Serbian. There are German troops here, German paramilitaries, British paramilitaries, but they're keeping back from us deeper in the facility. Yes, I am in one of the black Mercedes-Benz SUVs inside the detention center. Becky is I'm going to be using the phone as a microphone so she can give us a live report. Becky, what about Blackwater connections? We've been hearing a lot about that, and the company in several places has bragged that they have Blackwater connections.
I've heard so many names that it's just absolutely phenomenal to me. We're not disclosing the name of our parent company, and that's it. We're not disclosing the name of our parent company. We stand alone.
Well, there's a parent company.
Well,
there is a parent company of American Police Force.
There is an umbrella company. American Police Force stands alone as a corporation, and we are American Police Force. We are who we are.
But if it's a secretive group owned by a secret group and it's headed by a 14-time felon, and then they were putting police decals on their vehicles the first few days, I mean, don't people have a right to be a little bit concerned about this, Becky? There are newscasts for saying they wanted this the Guantanamo Bay West. That was on CNN.
That was not American Police Force, and I'd ask you to go back and recheck your sources. That was too.
So they've not been requesting to have this as a facility to hold detainees?
No, sir, and please, everyone listen carefully. Two Rivers Detention Facility will not hold Guantanamo Bay nor other multinational offenders. We're a minimum and medium.
Why did I see documents on the wall, blueprints saying foreign alien detention facility? This is real. This is a ghost site / black site that we have on. This is a FEMA center they want to hold. She was telling me I saw blueprints all over the place, scanning them quickly. As I was walking to the facility, and she'd say, "Oh, don't tape that," or "Don't show that." Where it was saying alien detention, troop barracks, processing facilities. She admitted they're going to do training to process people and to go out and set up checkpoints with CAT scan scanners, is the way she called it, to scan people's goods. So this is a huge processing center. I don't think she even knows everything. She seems pretty freaked out. She gets hired and finds out all this. And we went and interviewed bed and breakfasts because there's hardly any hotels here. And two of the places, they said, "Oh, absolutely. Germans, Czechs, Brits, a lot of Serbs, really hardcore-looking people. Won't pay in cash, act really suspicious. They've been here for a year. I mean, this is insane what we're dealing with up here. And they're just trying to act like it's all fine. We're not going to tell you our parent company. Everything's fine. Everything's wonderful. I mean, this is bizarro land.
Well, court records from Orange County, California indicate Michael Hilton has a lengthy criminal past, including a 6-year prison sentence for a dozen counts of grand theft and other charges. And we learned just yesterday there's a warrant out for Hilton's arrest in Wyoming.
American Police Force.
See, stuff like that, a real low-level management guy, they don't care. You can expose that guy. They replace that guy like that. It's like when you think about, like, Anheuser-Busch recently with the backlash of their promotion, and like Disney and all these other companies going woke and then losing massive amounts of money, and you think, why would they do that? Because they're just tools of the banking system, of the Illuminati, of the New World Order. It doesn't matter if they, they'll be propped up, or they can be replaced. Another one will come in their place. They're just low-level vessels of this big demonic octopus. They're just tentacles. You cut the tip off of one, it grows back. It doesn't matter. They're willing to sacrifice low-level things like that. Even big companies like Anheuser-Busch or Nike or Disney, they're tiny compared to the system.
Pulls out of contract negotiations with Two Rivers Authority.
All right, Sarah Bradley joins us now live from the newsroom to tell us more about the latest development in this story. Sarah?
Hey, Greg, Kathy. APF spokeswoman Becky Shea says it was a company decision to pull out. She says they learned things about the facility that made them lose interest in the deal.
We interrupt our regular program schedule for a special report.
Here is Wall Street Journal. KBR awarded Homeland Security contract worth up to $385 million to build 3 1 million person FEMA camps in the United States. It says the ICE detention and removal operations program can be used for illegal aliens and for U.S. citizens and for other emergencies. Here's the New York Times. Halliburton subsidiary gets contract to add temporary immigration detention centers. Just like under Rex 84, the documents came out in the 80s. They said the cover would be for illegal aliens, but it would be really a martial law takeover plan to suspend the Constitution and take over the media. So there's the New York Times we have saved up on prisonplanet.com. Also, George Bush reopened all the Japanese and German prisoner of war camps in the U.S. and put water in, light in, and then just have them set up and ready. That was in the CBS News. Bush to preserve World War II internment camps. So there's that article. Pentagon paying for fake news in the U.S. White House paying for fake news in the U.S. It's now in the tens of billions every year. This is what's going on. The fake news reports they produced and put on radio and TV that were made by the government. I've had Congress people on talking about how it's illegal, the fake news. All of this is being done. Fake polls, everything. How are they preparing the public? When I saw this at the time, I saw Tommy Franks and Cigar Aficionado. I saw Tommy Franks on CNN, Fox, MSNBC go, gee, I'm real sorry about this, but one more big terror attack, we're going to have a military form of government and martial law. I'm real sad about that, but that's what the American people are going to demand. That's the only thing that'll keep them safe. Now, you don't expect him to come out and say, gee, we're going to have a military dictatorship. Militaries throughout history love taking over societies 99% of the time, and America's just been in the exception. No, he's got to introduce it like, gee, shuck, I'm real upset, but it is the only thing that'll keep us safe. The Constitution won't survive a WMD attack. And I said at the time, I said, he is part of the Pentagon's billions in fake news. That's illegal. The General Accounting Office has already ruled that they're paying off reporters and people to go on TV. I said, I bet my bottom dollar Franks is being paid off. Now they're rolling them out in the news. The camps will be for you when you're starving during the collapse of society, which is what the IMF and World Bank have done to countless third world countries, and their own documents say they want to do it here.
They rather than using martial law, they could use self-enslavement. You know, we've seen that propaganda roll out, self-quarantine, self-lockdown. There's a lot of talk recently in the conspiratorial channels of mass inflation and economic collapse. And it makes sense because they're trying to roll out that Federal Reserve digital currency. What do they call that? Fed Now or something like that? Or what the heck's the term for that? Something digital CMDC or something. I can't remember the acronym, but Fed Now is the program. I think that's supposed to be coming out here in June or July. And it would make sense to collapse the economy to force everybody onto that digital currency. But any sort of crisis, and they know now they can get people, hey, stores are shut down. If you want to be fed and sheltered, come to this location. And just gather everybody into one location. It's insane, man. Like, the possibility, I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying the possibility of it happening exists now. And when you just look at what the government's been doing the last couple of years, it would seem you can kind of follow their thought pattern. You can see what they're training for, what they're what they're planning for, and see where it's going.
That fully bankrupt you so they can consolidate everything with the tens of trillions of fiat currency they're holding and hoarding of taxpayer money. And then once the riots start, which they're trying to push, they have Zbigniew Brzezinski on MSNBC, we played that the other day, saying, I'm really worried about these bankers. They're going to cause riots nationwide.
Millions and millions of unemployed. People really facing dire straits. And we're going to be having that for some period of time before things hopefully improve. And at the same time, there is this public awareness of this extraordinary wealth that was transferred to a few individuals. And you sort of say to yourself, what's going to...
I think he died, but he was a very, very high-level New World Order guy, along the same lines as Henry Kissinger.
happen in the society when these people are without jobs, when their families hurt, when they lose their homes and so forth.
As if he isn't one of the engineers of it. See, they know they've got revolution on their hands. They know that we did our job warning the people and exposing what was happening and putting all this information out, and people found out it was true. Here it is. This is from my film, The Road to Tyranny. I have 18 hours of this. I have them training all over the country. I have them teaching police to arrest anybody with a get us out of the UN sticker. This is what's been going on. Here it is.
You're damn right, because think about the Christians, okay? Do you accept Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior? No. What did they do? They took your head off. They beheaded you if you didn't accept Jesus.
Well, I think we watched that on, we watched that with our 9/11 series. What blasphemous lying do it just program? The Christians, do you accept Jesus as Lord and Savior? You say no, they cut your head off. Where? Where is that happening? That's not happening. That's not the gospel. We present the gospel to you. What you do with it is on you. You know, we proclaim the truth, and it's now you got to deal with it. You answer to God. It's not our job to force it upon you or to bring you to a, that's just insane lying.
Christ, your Lord and Savior. See, this is reality. Yeah, they're terrorists, but the bottom line is to them, they are not. When people are passionate about what they believe in, they become a very difficult enemy to beat. Who was the first terrorist organization in the United States? Who? Founding Fathers. Founding Fathers. You mean Thomas Jefferson?
Look at this guy. You know, he's talking about the Founding Fathers and people that are committed. He's talking about constitutional terrorists. Before that, the cops are so conditioned, they say, who are the terrorists? Who are the first terrorists? The Founding Fathers. They all know. They all say Founding Fathers. They've already been taught this many times. He says that's a very difficult enemy to beat. No, you are the enemy when you become an enemy of the Bill of Rights and Constitution and let foreign bankers take us over. Play it again.
The guys who we call our Founding Fathers, George Washington, Mr. Honest, who cut down a cherry tree and admitted it, is the same guy who signed death orders, if you will, on members of the British government, the British Crown, who they wanted to eliminate because politically they had influence in certain pockets of the United States, at that time the 13 colonies, and they wanted to divide and conquer. They may get a whole lot of civilians, and hey, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? If they killed 10,000 civilians tomorrow with a biological agent, that's too bad for them.
You see, it was all about Bush was going to do this. No, Bush was a puppet.
Those are dangerous type people. They're so brainwashed and deceived into thinking the system is God. The system is what needs to be protected from the people. Those are the type of people that will execute, and just without thought. They're dangerous. The follow order sheep that just do as they're told. And they've been, like I said, like we talked about in the last video, the original purpose of a police and military force was to protect the citizens from the tyranny of governments. When the government started overstepping its constitutional limitations, that thin blue line was supposed to protect us from them. And that's now been reversed, where that thin blue line has become a thick red line that protects the system from the people. It's a complete reversal of what America's supposed to be.
Just like Nixon and Carter and Reagan and Bush and Clinton and Bush and Obama, they're just puppets, and we always obsess over them, and the media acts like they're running something. It's the executive power held by the National Security Council. In fact, 3 weeks ago, they had an article about General James Jones and the National Security Council saying they've now taken over continuity of government, even from the executive and Homeland Security, and that this private group runs it all. And then General Jones was in the CFR website writing, I take all my orders from former national security heads, Henry Kissinger and the CFR. I mean, that's why in the last week there have been 4 mainstream news articles that we posted at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com with Bilderberg Group members like Etienne Davignon, the chairman of Bilderberg, saying, we set up the European Union, we set up the G20, we've set up the New World Order banking system. I mean, now they're openly bragging it's world government and they run it.
But it is the awareness itself that will drive the change. And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements. But the many business leaders who have been present here are among those taking leadership in other ways.
Yet these problems can be overcome by a joint effort in and between our countries. 2009 is also the first year of global governance with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet.
This is collective action, people working together at their best. I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation.
You notice, so if you say to somebody, hey, I believe in a new world order, they immediately connect that to a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, a lunatic. But the elite are saying it out of their own mouths. You just heard them. You know, out of their own mouths, they say New World Order.
And then if I dare talk about it, they go, oh, shut up, Jones. You crazy nut. None of that exists. And if you talk about it, you're going to cause violence. Just give in to the New World Order, roll over to it, hand your guns in. Let's start with the airport adventures, which they now admit are going nationwide with the Viper teams at bus stops, train stops, the streets, shopping malls, random vans, sending you through body scanners, biometrically scanning 360 your naked body. Now, I've seen more in-depth images by the actual companies where they can zoom in on pores. Okay, so they're showing you a low-res image, but totally naked, your family, it's child porn, they don't care. Now, if you take a picture of your 2-year-old daughter in diapers, and this made ABC News and CNN, the children's bottoms weren't even seen, but because the children had towels around them hugging. That was a 3-year-old and 2-year-old. They were arrested. Their children were taken. So that's things that aren't bad are called bad. But then the government recording your naked wife, you, your children, and now they're going in at all major airports, 214, and there people in Houston are being forced through them, but people are refusing and saying, no, you perverts, you're not going to do that. So Aaron Dykes and Rob Dew, back from 6 days of adventure with the police state in Canada and the U.S. Tell us what happened.
Well, I got hit up first. This was in D.C. flying to Detroit.
Because you got long hair. You get pulled out every time. Some kind of Al-Qaeda.
But Aaron was already through security, and I walked through, and they go, oh, sir, can you step in here? And I said, so what's that? And they said, oh, this is our RFID scanner. I said, no, I'm not going in there. And what do you mean? And I said, I'm not going in there. I said, I don't agree with that. And they said, oh, well, it's voluntary. I said, well, good, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, but that's like SeaWorld made you thumbprint at first. It was voluntary. Now it's mandatory. It's like dog training.
Passengers describe a terror attack and the arrest of a suspect who tried to blow up a plane as it landed at Metro Airport.
We heard a loud pop, then a bit of a smoke.
Sounded first like a balloon being popped.
All of a sudden, heard some screams, and flight attendants ran up and down the aisles, and
everything's crazy. People are screaming. There's fire on the plane.
So there was a lady shouting back, and she was saying things like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And at that moment, I was sure I was going to die.
And we're learning tonight more about the suspect. Let's get to Fox News' Andrea Isom. She begins our team coverage. She is live at Metropolitan Airport. Andrea?
As the hours go on, you are right. We are learning more about the suspect, and quite frankly, the details are chilling. The man, the menace, 23-year-old Abdul Mudala of Nigeria. Mudala's despicable actions were all on Al-Qaeda's behalf. Sources telling Fox News his instructions were to blow up the plane over U.S. soil.
The intelligence community knew about Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab weeks ago and failed to spread word that would have put him on the no-fly list.
The father of the suspect in the Christmas incident warned U.S. officials in Africa about his son's extremist views.
that a report was prepared and it was sent on to the CIA in Langley, Virginia, CIA headquarters, but it was not disseminated to the wider intelligence community.
Obviously, when you have a father coming in and talking to the embassy about a son who's radicalized, gives the embassy the passport number, the first thing you would think is a very fast effort to see if the person's got a visa and suspend the visa.
One of the things you don't know about is the number of people that we have turned away because their name has been on the watch list or on the no-fly list.
Only my mom could, but not me and my dad, because both me and my dad are on the watch list.
Tough to believe, but 8 years later, we are still talking about connecting the dots and a failure to communicate.
Call for immediate reviews on how this guy got on the plane
and how he was able to get some explosives on the plane. So we got a while to go.
This is a controlled patsy.
Facts are facts. You can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts.
And we have this same pattern that we've seen again and again. We have these individuals that have very limited mental equipment, but nevertheless they're able to work miracles. In other words, they can do things that a normal person would never be able to do. You'd be arrested, you'd be questioned, you'd be searched, you'd be stopped in some way.
He gets out of countries, he's disheveled, looks like he's drugged, stumbling around. I mean, this is classic.
He doesn't get on any serious list for scrutiny or special search. And then we have this famous story of the well-dressed Indian who accompanies him.
I saw two men, and they caught my eye because they seemed to be an odd pair. One was what I would describe as a poor-looking black teenager around 16 or 17, and the other man, a age 50-ish, wealthy-looking Indian man, and I was just wondering why they were together. Kind of strange. And I watched them approach what I would call the ticket agent, the final person that checks your boarding pass before you get on the plane.
He gets from one plane to another thanks to this patsy minder, a patsy chaperone or patsy monitor.
The only person that spoke was the Indian man, and what he said was, this man needs to board the plane, but he doesn't have a passport. And the ticket agent responded, well, if he doesn't have a passport, he can't get on the plane. To which the Indian man responded back, he's from Sudan, we do this all the time. And the ticket agent said, well, then you'll have to go and talk to my manager. And she directed them down a hallway. And that was the last time that I saw the Indian man, and the black man I didn't see again until he tried to blow up our plane.
Then I'd be interested to see, is there a passport? Won't the FBI please show us a passport if there is one?
They won't release the videos from Amsterdam. I mean, this is suspicious.
Oh, yes. I think it's beyond suspicious. It's a clear case of a patsy. So he's a controlled asset. And, of course, it's not a matter of failure to connect the dots. We're hearing all about the unconnected dots. No, this is the desired outcome. Let me just point out a couple of other things here. We're told that this alleged bomber, right, Knicker bomber, whatever they call him, he was in contact with this character Awlaki in Yemen. And, of course, this Awlaki, I call him Awlaki the CIA lackey. Awlaki the lackey, and remember, he's a CIA lackey. He's a double agent, a triple agent, if you want. He is used as a kind of beacon to recruit patsies across the world, and they can always sheep dip somebody like Major Hassan. If they want to say, you're linked to Al-Qaeda, they just have you exchange a few emails with this Awlaki, and that's what he's good for, right? He goes back to 9/11 and Hani Hanjour. So this guy is he's a U.S. agent under whatever layers of garb that he's got. The other thing is, how was this young patsy Omar Farouk Muttalib? How was he radicalized? And I think we're getting some pretty good indications that it's this Brixton Mosque, Finsbury Mosque axis in London, the school for patsies, the British patsy.
Which, by the way, 6 months ago, I remember it, you predicted we'd see plane bombings out of that mosque.
This is not so hard to do. Remember Richard Reed, mentally retarded vagrant who was sleeping on the floor of Brixton Mosque, I think. He was given the same PETN explosive by somebody, so that's what this Omar Farouk was given then, allegedly, once again, in in Yemen. So you can see it fits together, and it all comes from these same places.
There are reports today that the Christmas Day body bomber met with an American-born radical cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki. He's believed to be living in Yemen, al-Awlaki is. He's not only been linked to al-Qaeda in the past, but he reportedly exchanged emails with the suspected Fort Hood shooter Nidal Hassan before that shooting massacre in Texas.
I would also point out that the security company at Schiphol Airport is ICTS, which is a Israeli-owned firm. They were the same firm that allowed Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, to board the flight, the American Airlines flight to Miami. Same explosive material was found in his shoes as was found in Mr. Mutalib's underwear. They ignored the threats on purpose. Obviously, we had a lot of people sitting at home over the Christmas holidays, families gathered around a television set. Another terror attack, huge problems for travel now.
When we talk about screenings at the airport and other protective mechanisms along the way, what should we be doing that clearly we're not?
The scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy in the U.S. that would give us the ability to see what someone has concealed underneath their clothing.
These body scanners are the key with these different psychological syndromes where people serve the abuser.
Yeah, because that's what you have to get in as to where this is going. It's not fun. It's degradation. It's the dehumanization of the individual. So really, what they're telling you is not only...
It's crazy how far technology's come. Like, that was invasive, but now we all carry around our own CIA listening device, and they got drones that can probably see right through your walls. Like, it's just crazy. Technology it advances so quickly. There's no telling what kind of stuff they have, that they can track us and monitor and gather information.
You not own your body. You own nothing. You don't even own the patents to your own genes. They're telling you you're a piece of property.
What do they do when you first come into a prison? They strip you and do a medical exam to humiliate you.
They hold you down in front of other prisoners and they laugh at you, make jokes about you.
When Aaron went through, it was even worse because I was behind him.
Yeah, I went through. He told me to go through the scanner, and I said no. He said, "Why aren't you going to do it?" I said, "It violates my privacy." And this is what happened. This guy got scared. This guy was physically bigger than me. He was athletic. He started shaking when I said no. You think it doesn't matter to...
Well, because it's a delusional world. He thought he found a real terrorist.
Yeah. He was shaking, visibly shaking when I said no. And he tried to trick me to go through it again and told me they were going to body wand me, which they ended up doing. And then he tells me, "Oh, because I don't like it because it violates my Fourth Amendment, I read too much." Oh, you're one of those who reads too much.
And you said he put his hands on you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he grabbed
When I
me
said
just
no,
like this.
He started shaking. He didn't know what to do, and then his first flinch reaction was to grab my arm and try to pull me through the scanner. It was absolutely crazy. And you got women apologizing to the agents. "I'm so sorry, I forgot my mascara and my lipstick." And the Fourth Amendment says if you're going to search, you're not only going to have a warrant, you're going to say specifically what you're looking for. But it's not specific. It's liquids, it's lipstick, it could be shoes, it could be...
Breaking the will of the people. The real purpose of body scanners, and you scroll down, it shows the Nazis and others strip searching women in World War II.
I'll tell you what I would do personally. I would just take photographs of all the mass graves.
You see how normal sheeple would think about that, though? They'd go, "Yeah, so what? If you ain't got nothing to hide, what's the problem? Go through the scanner. Oh, if you ain't got nothing to hide, open the door and let them come in and search your house. If you ain't got nothing to hide, let them go through your personal papers." The point is that's authoritarianism. It violates the Constitution. It's just another step towards tyranny.
World War II and the Soviet Union, of all the naked bodies and having placards of that.
Result.
Genius.
And saying we're not going to end up like this. No, thank you.
Great idea, pointing out that they always strip you down before they kill you. And it's a real act of submission. Do you agree with me that this telling everyone you will be naked body scanned is a key point in our conditioning and we must resist it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's an ongoing process of personalization, dehumanization, and getting the public to accept the fact that they're nothing but cattle.
Once you're on the plane, you're coming into Detroit, What happens next?
The pilot comes on the speaker and he says we have 10 minutes to landing. Flight crew, take your seats and buckle up. A flight attendant walks by my seat, mumbling to herself, something smells like smoke. I looked up. I'm in row 27. I could see smoke coming from row 19, 8 rows up. It wasn't a lot of smoke at that time. It looked like it was coming from the floor. So I unbuckled my seatbelt, took a few steps up the aisle to get a better look, and then it burst into flames across the floor of the seats and up the wall to the ceiling. When it burst into flames, people were screaming, "Fire, fire, terrorists, water, 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 we need water, somebody get water." Flight attendants were screaming. The pilot comes on the intercom and says emergency landing and starts speeding up. And while this is going on, the terrorist man's being hauled off into the first class area by a couple passengers.
We are 5 days into this, and we've not seen any surveillance footage. The media doesn't seem concerned about eyewitnesses seeing a man videotaping the whole flight aimed at this guy.
When we first took off, I noticed about 10 seats ahead of us to the left-hand side, he had a camcorder, and I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe this was his first flight and was just excited. And then when the actual incident occurred, I looked up, and he was the only one standing and filming the entire thing.
That's obvious, an accomplice or a handler or something. We've got this other guy getting him through security. I mean, any other comments?
When we were being detained in Detroit, we were held in an area of the baggage claim area. Then all the passengers from our flight, there was nobody except for some law enforcement personnel. After we had been there for about an hour, all the time with our carry-on bags, 3 bomb-sniffing dogs were brought in. One of them sat down by the bag that was brought in by the man in orange. He had an orange. He appeared to be of Indian or Pakistani or some similar descent, maybe around age 30. He was walked back to a room, not in handcuffs. He went in the door. He was in there approximately an hour. When he came out, he was handcuffed, taken away. An FBI officer came up to the group of the rest of us passengers and said the following, which is not exact but close. You're being moved to another area. It's not safe here. I'm sure all of you saw what just happened and can figure out why you're being moved.
We were taken to a customs area, and they brought bomb dogs in, checked all the luggage with that. Another person was taken aside and handcuffed and brought out, and we were moved into another room for safety reasons, they told us.
My story on this has been the same all along, and the FBI now has 5 versions of their story, which I clearly lay out with a time period and with each version, and they're not credible. There is absolutely no excuse for the reason why. Number one, we were left on the plane for 20 minutes, not knowing if there was another bomb there. Number 2, security allowing us to take our carry-on bags off the plane, and we stood there with all of our bags together for an hour until the bomb-sniffing dogs arrived. And then, after they found one, well, then we're moved to another area, and now they don't want to talk about the man who was taken away.
You were there. They didn't stop him for immigration violations. The dog went over and sat down in front of his bag. The alert for explosives.
Right. Exactly.
Unless this is a passport-sniffing dog. This is a huge story, one of the biggest out there. The FBI is on this full time. They know what's going on. Why are they being dishonest? And how do we investigate this when the investigators themselves are engaged in clear obstruction of the truth?
I don't know how else to take it. It's either utter incompetence or intentionally hiding something, and I don't know how to take it.
And still, we're now, 8-9 days into this, and we still haven't seen the Amsterdam footage.
Well, and also, why aren't we seeing the video of when he's going through metal detector, passport check, and boarding? This is a modern airport. You'd think they would have video of all this of some sort.
They didn't say, we'll look at that. They just said, no, there was no one helping him, which is very suspicious, instead of just putting the footage out.
If somebody robs a bank or holds up a gas station, well, there's video footage of the incident on the 11 o'clock news, usually that very night. If I'm not correct, well, show the video. What are you hiding?
Well, now, Sunday it came out, 5 days ago, 6 days ago, authorities were watching different Nigerian on Christmas Day flights, CNN. What a way to take a huge issue and just kind of put it out there like it's milquetoast. Okay, there was somebody else. Yeah, they did arrest him, but we're not going to talk about it. Kurt, there's a definite cover-up, and you've been vindicated in triplicate.
Not only that, but I don't know if you caught the ABC News article that came out over the weekend. There were a couple sentences snuck in the bottom of this article about female suicide bombers. I don't know if you caught this.
No, tell us.
I'll read it to you word for word. Federal agents also tell ABC News they're attempting to identify a man who passengers said helped Abdul Muttalab change planes for Detroit when he landed in Amsterdam from Lagos, Nigeria. Authorities had initially discounted the passenger accounts, but the agents say there is a growing belief the man may have played a role to make sure Abdul Muttalab did not get cold feet.
Oh my God, you've been vindicated by them on that. But obviously they think the trail's cold now. They have all the surveillance footage. They were involved in a cover-up. Kurt, this is huge.
Well, that was my take on it, but unfortunately for ABC News, they buried it in the bottom of a seemingly unrelated article about female suicide bombers heading here from Yemen. Why is this not front page news everywhere, number one? Number two, why are you burying it at the bottom of this article? Number three, why did you initially discount my story to begin with? It's not like I'm not credible here.
And of course, they had COINTELPRO posing as the Patriot movement attacking you. All the usual suspects. I mean, it never ends, Kurt. We are, of course, going to get into the top story today. In plain view, as if it's no big deal, DetroitNews.com. Okay, it was a U.S. government agent that was the smart-dressed man that led Umar Farouk al-Matab, or the underwear bomber, on to the aircraft in Amsterdam. After a month plus of lying and saying that no such man existed, and saying no one else was pulled off the plane in Detroit, supposedly with a bomb. Now they've admitted that happened as well. Kurt Haskell, the lawyer, and his lawyer wife, they've both on record have been proven right with other witnesses. And you add how they were already getting in Yemen. That's now confirmed. Washington Post. They were.
So I don't know if I'm following this correctly. Like, this story is just a minor piece of the puzzle, but I think what they're saying is the government used this man, got him access to the plane, probably gave him the bomb, put him on the plane, in the hopes that it would have been followed through, or maybe they didn't plan on detonating anyways because they got their desired. Again, it's crisis, reaction, solution. Order out cow, order out of chaos. Create a situation that causes fear and panic. Offer an authoritarian solution to counteract that. People, when they're afraid, will give up freedoms. So when they were trying to institute these body scanners and there was resistance, let's put a shoe bomber and say, see, we couldn't have known that. How would we know it's in a shoe unless we have these body scanners? A problem, solution, problem, reaction, solution. That's how they get their way. So they probably didn't even need the bomb. They just needed attention on the bomb. They didn't need it to explode. They just needed to say, hey, look, he got this on. You know, we need precautions to make sure that doesn't happen.
Planning to already launch a bigger attack, 2,000 troops there. And then right on time, right as the body scanners were scheduled to go in January nationwide. That was already scheduled, folks. They're saying on the news, oh, now we're doing this. So now I went and looked it up. They were scheduled to go in the additional 214 airports. They were in less than 20.
So although we have acquired these machines, they are not as widely deployed as they should be.
In your current role as a consultant, do you have an interest in body scanners?
We consult with all kinds of firms, including firms that do manufacture body scanners.
You do have some interest in more sales of body scanners.
As well as a lot of other security measures. But I would point out that I've talked about this for probably the last 3 years.
Read what the scanners do to your body. And the TSA guys, again, You need to know why you're going to be dying in 5 years of cancer. Go ahead.
And then we find this article about terahertz waves, which is what they use to do this scanner. This came in today. And according to one of their studies, I'm just going to read this real quick. Terahertz waves are in the electromagnetic spectrum between microwaves and infrared. And they pass through non-conductive materials such as clothes, paper, wood, and brick. They say the forces that are generated by these THZ fields are tiny and resonant effects that allow the THZ waves to unzip double-stranded DNA, creating bubbles in the strand that could significantly interfere with processes such as gene expression and DNA replication.
So step in the microwave. And of course, the fools don't know that the reports you've pulled up and I've looked at, these things are leaking. But the TSA guys are going to love dying of cancer.
Oh yeah,
this is fun.
Surrounding it, they're all around it. The thing's right there.
Well, see, that's kind of the good thing, though. See, evil always gets judged. These guys make excuses. They're going to make excuses about scanning naked children, scanning naked women and men. They're going to make excuses about how it doesn't hurt you. They're the ones that are going to die first.
8 hours a day standing around it.
And I'm sad for them, but this is what they want. This is what they get.
This is a test of the emergency alert system.
Let's go ahead and play the clergy response team clip. Now remember, before this became national news, we got the secret documents from pastors who've been recruited by FEMA. We posted the secret documents with FEMA phone numbers. Train your flocks to turn their guns in. Train your flocks to go to FEMA camps. Train your flocks to take forced inoculations. People didn't believe us.
We just had that. We had whole sections of churches saying, well, we better just follow the rules and shut down and everybody go get the poke. You know, make sure you get that done. Unreal.
Just like they didn't believe the MIAC report. Then, suddenly, local news began reporting it, but like it was a good thing. Now listen, will martial law ever be a reality? And the preachers are there, being paid by the government, faith-based initiative, now continuing under Obama, to tell their flocks to do what they're told by the authorities, and the government's biggest threat is the American people. That's a quote. So this is specifically the pastors getting ready for us to go to FEMA camps. And there's thousands of pieces of evidence like this, and Glenn Beck's saying it doesn't exist.
So Romans 13 calls on us to submit to authorities. And again, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. You know, the authoritarian people are not our enemies. The principalities and powers behind them, the ideology behind them, which is exposed through information, through communication, and not through violence. So we submit to authorities. We do what they ask us to do. We attempt to live quiet, peaceable lives. We don't violate God's commands. So, for instance, when they say no more church gatherings, you know, it's dangerous to public health, you go, well, scriptures tell me to not forsake the gathering. I am required by God to gather together with fellow saints. Whether that's in a building, a home church, a Bible study, whatever. But they were trying to shut that down too. Remember, any gatherings over X amount of people. So then what do? We passively resist. We say, because then you're still under submission to the authority. The authority says, do this or receive this punishment. So you have a choice there. A, do this. B, receive the punishment. So whichever way you go, you're still submitting to it. So we submit passively. We go, what you're saying to do violates God's command. I cannot do it, therefore I choose to receive the punishment. You know, I'm going to violate what you're telling me to do passively. I'm not going to resist violently. I'm not going to take up arms. I'm not going to fight against you. I'm going to obey God. And if you arrest me, you put me in prison, you torture me, you kill me, whatever, I accept that. That's passive resistance, but it's still submitting to authority, because the authority says, do this or. It's giving you the choice. You have the choice. I choose to obey God and risk my freedom. You know, if you come arrest me, you come arrest me. You know, you say I can't gather together with believers, I'm going to go gather together with believers. You say there's a curfew and my Bible study because I work until a certain amount of time, so the only time I can gather together with believers is after your curfew. God tells me I need fellow believers. I'm going, and if you arrest me, you arrest me. You find me, whatever. I'm not going to fight you, but I'm not going to go along. You tell me to take this thing that I believe is a risk to me. I think it is altering DNA, which is I'm made in the image of God, and I believe that it is a precursor to the mark of the beast, and I don't exactly know what the mark is, so to be safe, I'm going to avoid everything that looks like it, so I cannot do what you say. And so you say, do this, or you'll be unemployed, you won't be able to get assistance, you won't be able to go anywhere. I'm choosing or, I'm submitting to God by I'm not doing that, but I'm also submitting to authority by saying, you do what you got to do. You got to arrest me, that's fine. You got to put me, torture me, kill me, whatever, that's fine. I'm going to obey God and accept the consequences. And that's how we resist. We don't take up arms. We don't fight a new revolution. We're not seeking out political changes because we recognize both parties are part of the system. So that two-party choice is just an illusion.
Here it is.
Law ever become a reality in America? Some fear any nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on U.S. territory might trigger just that. And as KSLA News 12 Jeff Farrell discovered, the clergy would help the government with potentially their biggest problem, us.
From my cold, dead hands.
Charlton Heston's famous declaration captures a truly American value, the overarching desire to protect our freedoms. But gun confiscation is exactly what happened during the state of emergency following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. U.S. troops also arrived, something far easier to do even now thanks to last year's elimination of the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act. That forbid U.S. troops from policing on American soil. If martial law were enacted here at home, like depicted in the movie The Siege, easing public fears and quelling dissent would be critical. And that's exactly what the Clergy Response Team, as it's called, helped accomplish in New Orleans.
Jeff, the primary thing that we say to anybody is let's cooperate and get this thing over with, and then we'll settle the differences once the crisis is over.
Such clergy response teams would walk a tightrope between the needs of the government versus the wishes of the public.
In a lot of cases, these clergy would already be known in the neighborhoods in which they're helping to defuse that situation.
For the clergy, one of the biggest tools that they will have in helping calm the public down or obey the law is the Bible itself, specifically Romans 13.
Because the government is established by the Lord, and that's what we believe in the Christian faith. That's what's stated in the Scripture.
Civil rights advocates believe the amount of public cooperation may depend largely on how long they expect a suspension of their rights might last.
And see, here is Mother Jones. Should Obama control the internet? It says right here, Senator John Rockefeller, goes by Jay Rockefeller, has announced they need to end the internet, that it's bad, and that private companies will have government hubs tied into them to snoop on everyone without warrants and to be able to shut down the web instantly. See, right now the government has to get warrants and go out and seize all the hubs.
The free internet is no longer free. It's now all under control of Google and Facebook and Twitter and all those other, Apple. It's locked down now, censored. It's getting harder and harder to find. Just go on YouTube and try to find something along these lines. Like you could type in exact headline titles, and it still won't show you. It gives you filtered mainstream propaganda nonsense. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be I could go on there and type in right here, Mother Jones, should Obama control the internet? Boom, that article pops up. Now I'll get a bunch of mainstream stuff, and you have to dig. Maybe you won't even be able to find this unless you have the exact address to type in.
Here's another one. America's secret police Intelligence experts warn the proposal to merge two Pentagon intelligence units could create an ominous new agency, and the head of cybersecurity just resigned 3 weeks ago saying the Pentagon and Homeland Security are taking over the internet and it's a threat to freedom in America. So their own guy's quitting, saying this takeover is happening. All the radio and TV in the nation under the emergency alert system in 96 under a federal law and executive order, FEMA is wired into the transmitters themselves and cable to take over all the systems and broadcast anytime they want. Before, the stations would tune to a signal themselves. Now that's out of their hands. All of that's going on. So see, they've got the preachers, they've got the citizens, they've got the military prepared for martial law, and they could remotely listen to you even when the cell phone's off. That's standardized the cell phones. And all telecommunications companies were given $9 billion total to put in whole floors for the NSA to move into. So the NSA doesn't tap the phone companies, they are the phone companies. Just like FEMA on all radio, TV, cable, you name it, is already in control with hubs at the transmitter site or at the satellite uplink site, the last piece of equipment. This is in my film Police State 2000, by the way. See, I was sitting there talking to the engineer in 1996 at KJFK FM, and he calls me over and goes, look at this, Alex, they're ordering us to do this. Here's all the secret documents. We're not supposed to show this to anybody. And I was sitting there reading it. FEMA takes over through this. Everything you do goes through this system. I mean, that's what you hear when it goes bang, bang, bang. You know, this has been an emergency alert system. That is a federal test tone going via shortwave radio transmitters, dials in, and takes control of your radio station. And that's what they say right here. During emergencies, when they're rounding people up and arresting them and shooting people, their job is to keep the media shut down. They don't have to come arrest Alex Jones. They hit one button, the internet shuts off. They hit one button,
In the not-too-distant future, a self-proclaimed intellectual elite will rule every aspect of our lives.
People in the world are content to stay as first or second level
The
maggots.
economy is emerging from the recession.
We have to keep geoengineering on the table.
Implementation depends on motivation.
An alarming and possibly catastrophic disaster.
Already the path has been chosen, the design set in motion decades ago. Their endgame?
Complete control. Water. Air.
The economy.
Population and even human logistics
will all fall within their purview. The goal? To acquire all the natural resources of the planet and bring them securely under government control.
All activities of mankind will be monitored, accounted for, and controlled.
Legislation pretending to address concerns about the environment,
national security,
and financial stability will in fact be used to erode the very foundations of liberty and to enslave the population. This will all happen in the name of security and progress. Alluding to the notion that this is all for our protection, this will not miraculously occur overnight with the sudden proclamation of martial law.
It has been happening incrementally for at least half a century. Every law enacted that truncates the Bill of Rights in the name of national security
is another nail in our coffin. Through this type of increasingly invasive legislation, the systematic decay of constitutional law becomes inevitable.
Thousands of years of building and rebuilding, creating and recreating so you can let it crumble to dust.
Leaving our essential rights neutered and impotent. The Bill of Rights is reduced to a quaint antique, collecting dust in a library somewhere, retaining all the potency of a fairy tale. Martial law, called a more politically neutral catchphrase, is practiced with an iron fist.
The implosion of the economy has begun by design. The United States dollar is under attack and losing value every day,
while the cost of living continues to skyrocket.
New laws that will effectively double taxes are already on the books and ready to be implemented.
Nothing has been introduced to help homeowners with their now default loans.
But at the same time, money is generously given to bankers who give themselves huge bonuses
during one of the worst economic downturns in history and dry up loans to small businesses.
All the while, The economy spirals downward at a free fall rate.
As the citizens of the United States lose their ability to take care of themselves, the government conveniently steps in to save the day.
Capitalism gives way to socialism, and then without much notice, into the neo-dark ages of the one-world government's total dictatorship.
Once this task has been completed and the control grid is firmly in place, they can play their final trump card.
FEMA camps.
And by design, we will welcome the salvation with open arms.
As any alternative will surely seem like suicide.
Once they've been properly enslaved, they gain control over the last of Earth's natural resources, humanity.
America, here's what you need to know tonight.
I'm, basically a rodeo clown.
If you have any kind of fear that we might be headed towards a totalitarian state, look at FEMA trailers, FEMA prisons, FEMA camps.
I want proof. If they exist, I want pictures.
I lost sleep last night worrying about this story, thinking about this story.
But when I see, 9/11 victim family on television or whatever, I'm just like, oh, shut
Well,
up.
Yesterday we talked about debunking conspiracy theories.
The only thing that I answer to is myself. And I just want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and also sleep at night.
Glenn Beck, a year and a half ago, said that Ron Paul supporters should be arrested and that the army should be used against them and that they were dangerous terrorists.
Try to keep your eyes open. I know it's probably impossible.
Or that's what I'd have you believe.
It took me about a year to start hating the 9/11 victims' families. I don't hate all of them. I hate probably about 10 of them.
Any of these 9/11 truthers, who I've been telling you for years, are dangerous.
Guy Fawkes. This guy was a British terrorist who tried to overthrow the government by blowing up Parliament and killing everybody in it. Paul's supporters called the donations, and I'm quoting, a money bomb. It's really not the way I would go, tying my movement in with a historical terrorist attack.
You're right. There's a strain of isolationism and anarchy in the American tradition, which Ron Paul is tapping into. I think it's very significant that he chose Guy Fawkes. There are plenty of, unfortunately, libertarian websites which are indistinguishable from the anti-American left these days.
Yeah.
So, totally in bed with the Islamo-fascists and have turned against this country.
You see how idiotic that tie-in was? He said, Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up Parliament. Ron Paul supporters are asking for a money bomb. See? It's the same. That's so dumb. It's like me saying Glenn Beck. Have you noticed the song Beck, song Loser from the 90s? Where he said, I'm a loser, baby. Can't you see that? And Glenn Beck, his name's Beck, he's a loser. See the connection? Do you see how ridiculous that is? That's what he just did on national TV. Dude, to this day, right now, people trust that guy. They think, he's the conservative, right? Dude. Upsetting. He's a Mormon, isn't he? I think he's a Mormon. Forgive me if I'm speaking out of hand there. I think I remember hearing that. But if he is, Mormonism's a witchcraft cult. And he's a spokesman for the right arm of the New World Order system.
Turn against this country.
Where am I wrong? The Ron Paul Revolution. I think it's meant to be a catchy slogan, but I fear some of his fringe supporters are taking the word revolution too literally.
What Glenn Beck is saying is a talking point being given out to the media.
And this is going to drive the conspiracy theorists crazy about me. I'll add this. They're making me say this. Help.
Because we were seeing Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity say it. We were seeing CNN hosts say it. We were seeing Joe Scarborough say it. And I said, that's a talking point. And And then suddenly he started saying a few months ago, I'm going to expose the FEMA camps.
If these things exist, that's bad, and we will cover it. If they don't exist, it's irresponsible to not debunk this story. We have an independent group on this program looking into it, turning over every stone. I am going to bring you this story.
He announced a few weeks ago, I'm going to have Popular Mechanics, the yellow journalist, on to debunk all of this.
So
So they always do. The government will always appoint independent investigators. So that's like saying, I'll investigate my own trial. You know, oh, you don't trust me? I'll get my buddy to investigate my own trial. He's independent. I'll get somebody independent under the same control grid. You know, it's ridiculous.
Asked James from Popular Mechanics to do an investigation on several projects. The first one is the FEMA camp.
Yes, and so we put a reporter on this, and what's so interesting here, we're waiting to really do a definitive deep dig on this. We don't like to just come out and say, oh, we've debunked it, you know, after we've looked at it for 2 days.
And how is Glenn Beck debunking it? I had predicted tonight, we'll see if I'm right, that he will do a straw man and focus on the websites that are getting it wrong.
And what we did was we looked into these claims. You know, you can't go and visit every one of the 600 sites that some of these conspiracy theorists claim. So we started looking at the ones that are most popular on the internet.
And I said, well, look out, folks. He's just trying to get your confidence to then discredit it later. We mailed letters to Glenn Beck. I know people that work in his office. I contacted him and I said, here's the proof. If he wants it, we stand by to work with Mr. Beck if he isn't going to come out next week and say arrest all of us, basically, like he was doing a year ago.
First of all, on the FEMA prison thing, I know we've been in contact with your office and we would appreciate any help that you have. I want to make sure we're turning over every stone on anything because there's a lot of crazy stuff that is being said about these things. And
because Beck says he's been doing months of research and they've been having trouble finding him. He's doing research, but he can't ever bring any facts. And he makes little jokes about, ooh, the government's going to get me, or, oh, I'm being censored on Fox, and calls us conspiracy theorists. And I'm predicting Glenn Beck is going to attack us this way. They're going to show the 1990s video of the closed down Amtrak train system up by Chicago.
So we started looking at the ones that are most popular on the internet.
Okay, and let's show the video. First, show me the video that is on the internet. This is one of the so-called, I guess, a death camp. This is something where they're showing a so-called concentration camp. These are turnstiles. This is in a secure behind the fence. I don't know how they got this video when it was behind the fence, but they went in and got this video.
Like so many of these things, the truth is actually fairly evident. This is an Amtrak repair facility in Beech Grove, Indiana. The woman who made this video initially claims that it's some kind of American Auschwitz, and they've outfitted buildings with gas, and they've got these strange turnstiles. In fact, it is a repair facility.
They're going to do that, and then what they're going to do is they're going to show the photos that are all over the web in Mississippi and Louisiana of mock Bosnia-Herzegovina / Kosovo training camps, because the signs are in that Slavic language, where it has machine gun nests, checkpoints, barbed wire as a refugee camp, and they send the troops through for drills.
Show me the pictures of, I think this is Camp Grayling. Do we have the picture of the watchtowers? This is pretty spooky. This is where Americans are currently being held, I believe they're saying.
Well, people say all kinds of things, and these pictures have been floating around the internet for more than 10 years.
Okay.
In fact, Camp Grayling is the largest National Guard training facility in the U.S. They train Army, Navy, Marines, and one of the groups they train is military police. And in fact, one of the functions they train them for is handling prisoners of war in a battle zone like Iraq.
And they're going to say, see, people said this was a camp. It's not really a camp. It's a place where they're doing drills. Oh, see, this is really just an Amtrak train track. We went out there, and yeah, it's got barbed wire facing in, but it's not really a camp.
Do we have the video with audio? Because if we don't, I don't really care. The video with the audio about the boarded up buildings with the gas chambers. Do you have that?
Straw man arguments are so ridiculous and so deceptive. They grab what's fake, So it'd be like when you hear the atheists come along and try to debunk the Bible, and they'll say like, oh, look at the Crusades, you know, Christians killing people, forcing Christianity, you know, okay, that's Catholic, not Bible. The Bible didn't say to do that. Or they'll say, oh, you guys celebrate Christmas on December 25th. That's not in the Bible. Exactly, that's Catholic tradition, not Bible. And they'll say, you know, just all sorts of ridiculous things like that. They set up a straw argument that can be, that they can then debunk and make it look ridiculous. It'd be like me investigating, you know, a paranormal thing. There's no such thing as ghosts. Well, there's demonic. Ghosts aren't what society makes ghosts out to be, but anyways, it'd be like me trying to debunk that whole paranormal stuff by showing video footage of a guy doing a prank on his wife with a sheet floating in the air and saying, ooh, look, somebody got footage of a ghost. Actually, it's just a guy pranking his wife with a sheet. Or, ooh, look at, there's a ghostly apparition there. And then, actually, it's just a reflection of somebody in a mirror. You know, I'm setting up straw arguments that I can debunk. That's what he's doing here. He's using these, they go and find these obviously false things and then debunk them so that people who watch this then will dismiss the entire argument. Will dismiss, anytime a FEMA camp comes up, they'll go, oh, I saw Glenn Beck debunk all that stuff. It's man, I had something else important to say about that. What was it? Just, you gotta watch out for straw man arguments.
In yet another fenced area, we see a large warehouse building at the end, with the electronic turnstiles in front of it.
Okay, that they were putting gas heaters of some sort in there.
Right, and what we found out is, first of all, one of those buildings has been knocked down. The other ones were upgraded. Their heating system was obsolete, and more than 15 years ago.
What am I predicting Glenn Beck's going to do tonight? What have I been predicting for weeks he's going to do? He is going to come out and say, look at this is just a regular prison, and they're taking photos of it and saying it's a camp. Oh, look at this. There's a kernel of truth. They have introduced a bill for during emergencies to have FEMA places for folks to go. I mean, they've got to do that, you know, like Katrina. Oh, look at this. This is an Army training facility for a refugee camp simulation. Oh, look at what I mean, I know how they operate. I know how Popular Mechanics operates. I mean, I was right about Glenn Beck setting you up when he said he was going to expose the FEMA camps, and I said, you watch, he's going to debunk them.
Well, trains, I believe Auschwitz had trains. I'm just saying, Jim.
Well, once you go down that road, you can't really, if somebody's wants to be convinced of that, you can't really debunk that.
I understand these people because he reads off a script, ladies and gentlemen. I know the sheet of music he's singing off of. I know the next line in the chorus. This stuff is scripted. So the establishment comes out and mixes some truth about FEMA camps and then makes jokes about it, mixing it in with patriots and gun owners are dangerous. He's currently doing that. And then some of them get fooled by that. I challenge Glenn Beck. You claim you've been doing research for weeks on this and you can't sleep. Okay, buddy. Everybody's going to email you, your radio show and Fox News, the last 45-minute piece we've done. Your little staffers can watch that, and everything there can be Googled, pulled up from government.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of. That's why people like David Icke and them are so dangerous, because they report a lot of truth, but then they have a whole lot of nonsense mixed in. And that nonsense, people like Glenn Beck, people like the shill media can focus on that nonsense, debunk that, and then say, see, everything. They just throw in the whole, so David Icke is an enemy. He's, you know, and he's a New World Order agent, whether knowingly or unknowingly. He presents you all this information, but he's throwing in this poison with it, knowing that the poison will debunk the rest of it. Because most people, somebody like Glenn Beck will come along and expose the poison, and then everybody's just going to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak.
Documents at the Army.mil and FBI and everywhere else, and then you'll have a clear picture of what's being set up and how they now have to orchestrate an economic collapse to get us to accept this as society breaks down. If Glenn Beck wants to know if the FEMA camps are real or not, all he has to do is go to the Army War College, the Army.mil website, the Army Times, and they say, and it's been all over the Phoenix newspapers, the police say they're ready to work with the military against the people, that their new mission is fighting the American people physically.
Chaos is hanging around.
All right, it's getting late here, and I still have stuff to do tonight, so I'm going to keep this short. But one thing I wanted to circle back around to is the Romans 13 thing. So as believers, our authority, and not just believers, everybody's authority, but most people, the unbelievers, ignore it and will be judged for it. But as believers, we are under submission to the Word of God. The Word of God is our authority. In Acts, when the apostles were arrested for preaching, they were beaten by the Sanhedrin, and when they were being released, they were threatened, saying, "We're going to let you go, just don't ever preach in this name again." And their response was, "We obey God rather than men. God is our authority. We're going to do what God tells us to do. You do what you got to do, but we're going to obey God." And that's the heart behind Romans 13. We are going to obey God with the understanding that God is sovereign and he providentially appoints all authorities, including tyrannical ones. When Paul wrote Romans 13, there was tyranny in place. It was the tyrannical Roman Empire, and Paul was telling people submit to the Roman Empire because God appoints authorities, all of them. Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, George Bush, all of them. God appoints them. And so it is our duty to submit, to attempt to live peaceable, quiet lives, to not cause a ruckus, to not fight against the system, to live a quiet life. And we obey the government, like I say, but that obedience is either passive or it's either active submission, or not submission. It's either active. Obedience is the word. Active obedience or passive acceptance. And so we have the either or. Do this or this will happen. And we can do this or we can accept the punishment. Either way, we are submitting to government. We're not resisting the government. We're choosing, and so we obey God. So when their command comes forth, when they issue edicts that are against God's command, we then choose the or. We say, no, we don't fight against it. We don't start plotting and planning and resisting physically and doing all that. That's not what we're called to do. We accept the punishment. We say, we can attempt to hide from the punishment a lot of times, to quietly resist, to not actively show to not poke our head out and say, "Hey, I'm not doing what you told me to do." We don't have to go and turn ourselves in. But we quietly and passively resist, accepting in our hearts that if the government comes and arrests us, we'll accept that. We're not going to resist. And so we have to look and say, is what they're doing, is what they're telling me to do opposed to God's edict? And if it is, then I have to choose this way. So when it comes like give up your guns, well, the Bible doesn't tell me anything about that. So I would choose to obey that. Some people might take a stand and say, no, they choose the or, but thou shalt not kill. You're not allowed to fight back. You're not allowed and submit to government. You're not allowed to actively resist, because then you're not choosing the either or. Give up your guns or go to prison or be fined. And you're saying you're choosing option 3. No, I'm going to fight. That is disobedience to government. Obedience would be, but everybody has to choose their either or. If you choose the or there, that's the hill you're going to die on. I don't think you have a biblical ground to stand on with that. Whereas if they say, hey, you're not allowed to evangelize, God tells me to preach the gospel to every creature. It's the only means of salvation. It's the only way people are going to get saved. I have to preach the gospel. So don't preach the gospel or you're going to prison. Well, I'm going to preach the gospel and accept the consequences. If you arrest me and send me to prison, so be it. I'm going to keep preaching the gospel. Don't gather for church or get a fine or lose your job or go to prison. Well, scriptures tell me to not forsake the gathering, so I'm going to obey that and accept the consequences. So on and so forth. It's just, we have a biblical edict that is our principle. And if you decide in your heart that if you can find a biblical precedent, I don't think there's a biblical reason for a Christian to take up arms. I don't see it. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. It's a constitutional thing, and I'm thankful that it's there, because the fear of an uprising is what keeps this totalitarian system at bay. But my hope is not in keeping this system at bay. My hope is in the gospel. I understand that this totalitarian system is going to happen, and I'm not trying to stop it. I'm trying to delay it, but God is sovereign over that. I'm trying to delay it by exposing it, but I hope what I'm saying is making sense. It's just, the Bible is our authority. And so when authoritarian systems command us to go against the scriptures, we have to choose the or. We don't choose rebellion and revolution. That's not for us. That's not what a Christian does. But we choose to say, I'm going to continue to obey God and accept the consequences. It's better, like the apostles, better to obey God than men. We're going to continue to preach. They didn't say, hey, this system is trying to stop our God-given right and our command to preach the gospel, therefore let's go arm up and let's storm the castle. That's not what they did. They said, well, we're going to keep preaching, so, if you got to arrest us, you got to arrest us. And that's the heart we're supposed to have. So anyways, that wraps up Police State 4. Lord willing, we're going to start a new one next time. Can't remember off the top of my head what it is. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching. I love you, and we'll talk to you next time.